For those who don't know me, I am John Foltz. I am Director of User Interface Technology here at Wolfram Research. And a lot of what I do is related to the front end. And so that's what I'm going to talk about today. So I titled my talk, Old, New, and Around the Bend. Let me just explain that a little bit. So a lot of the stuff that I'm going to be talking about today is some of it's kind of some overdue stuff. It's some stuff that some people in this room and a lot of other users as well have been asking for a long time. I feel like on some of this stuff we have a bit of an IOU or promissory note or something that that we're going to be in the process of delivering here real soon. But I'm also going to do something that I don't normally do. I usually, when I talk about stuff that is in development, I usually stick fairly closely to what I know I can promise and deliver in the next release. And we have a lot of good technology that I'm going to be showing today that that I know and can promise is in the next release. But the interesting thing is some of the directions that some of this technology opens up. And I think that having conversations with you about the direction that Mathematica takes, about the direction that Wolfram Research takes, is always productive. And so keeping in mind that that some of these things, and I'll be very clear about what they are, that I'm not going to necessarily make promises for version 10, but I'm going to point the directions that I think, that I see us heading in, and maybe this can be the beginning of a discussion that you can feel free to have with me or with several people in the front end group, some of whom are here in the front row. Rob, Jason, Lou, I'm sure Ian is out there somewhere as well. Ian is in the back, the rebel. So with that said, let's get started. Okay, so we've had some, and the fonts, they're a little small, but let me pump them up just a bit, but I wanted to leave myself a little room to demo here too. So in version 9, we started getting serious about what we call code assistance technologies. And this is the ability to be able to enter code and have sensible automatic completions. We've supported completions before, but you had to invoke them by hand. A lot of people didn't even know they were there, and we kind of didn't have the confidence to just put the completions out there and say, hey, we think that the interface is good enough that we'll just turn it on by default. And so most of you, certainly anyone who's used version 9 for any length of time, have seen this. And I realize now I'll probably have to pump up my magnification here. We're getting menus here based on what we're typing in. They're very easy to navigate. I find myself using them all the time. I was actually not a big user of the manual completion system. I know that some of you were, and I never kind of train myself that way. And I'm a fast enough typist that that I would just go ahead and type whatever it was I wanted. But with this system, I find myself hitting enter all the time just to accept the completion. So we have our basic completion mechanism, but we have some interesting things that are going on here too. Coming up in version 10, we have some variants on those completions. So for example, if I want to go ahead and choose a color here, and I want to choose, I don't know, I don't know what color I want. Why do I have to figure that out? So we have a new option here, which is just a completion, like any other completion, but now it brings up, apparently not, there we go. Now it brings up a menu, or a little widget there, which seems not to be working very well in slideshow mode. Well, that's the danger of doing these things, so let's try it there. Well, isn't this wonderful? Okay, so what we have is something that basically allows me to plug in the values and see what I'm going to get as a result. And if it will let me drag, no, it will not. Well, that was fun. Guess what? I have another version of Mathematica sitting around for just this purpose. Okay, this one is going to work. So here we go. We have something where I can get feedback on the actual color that I want. I choose something that I like, and then we click OK, and it plugs it in. So we're talking about not just keyboard assistance, but other sorts of things as well. We could do a color function, for example. So if we want to do a color function, we can choose a color scheme just right from here. And this went a bit off the side. This is why we're not shipping yet, by the way, in case you were wondering. But I can see everything that I want to use. Just choose one, and it plugs in everything for me automatically. So we have other sorts of completions as well. And many of these completions are, very nicely contextually sensitive. So, for example, if I'm, making, a cell of some sort, and then I want to choose a style. It knows that I'm choosing a style, and it even shows me a preview of some of those things. But I don't want that font. I want well, I didn't choose the best choice. I get many choices of Arial, apparently, if I do that. Maybe something like that. Okay, so, and now the system knows a lot more about what I'm trying to do, and it's given me a lot of help. And all these things were kind of cute, but the serious one that I really couldn't live without is file completion. So this one, I think, I find it difficult to, we had a feature that allows you to, to navigate through the file system. Oh, and by the way, it is in this wizard. So, if you want to navigate, you can bring up the file browser and then choose something, and it will go right in. But me, I'm a keyboardist. I love to type. I just need a little help, and I don't always remember those file names. So, so that is definitely coming. Now, looking forward, and this I think is probably going to happen for version 10. I don't want to guarantee it, but we have some promising results. It's even more sorts of. This is some data that we collected from a large body of code for if we were to just say, what would the 5 best values, if you haven't typed a key at all, what would the 5 best values be for the right-hand side of accuracy goal, for example? And so how do we solve this problem? We solve the problem with data. And I was a little concerned about this, that there would be a lot of crummy data out there. Okay, there's a little bit of crummy data. We have this kind of, some kind of bizarre thing here for axes label. I'm not really sure where that came from, but just the peculiarities of the code that we scraped. But in general, there are a lot of, I'm going through here, and there are a lot of really interesting source of completions. Some of them really obvious, some of them kind of maybe not obvious at first blush, but you're like, yeah, if I had to choose a color other than white and black, light yellow, yeah, probably better than dark red. So this is not in the milestones yet, and obviously we're going to have to curate the data so that we're not showing you completions of days, comma BQ, whatever BQ is. But okay, anybody know what that has to do with days?
It's radiation versus time.
Okay. So for some people, this completion would obviously be useful. Maybe I should reconsider taking it out. Okay. Okay, so moving on. This is an area that's always been something of an embarrassment for me, but there is a lot of work to be done. We have, on the Macintosh side, we have these nice new Retina displays that came out for the MacBook Pros, and who knows what's going to get announced this week, or is it today? Yeah, it's today. Yeah, who knows what they're going to announce today. Maybe there will be more Retina displays coming. I don't know. Could be happening right this very moment. Well, probably not. It's 7 a.m. there. But making Retina work properly was a big engineering challenge. But if you're in the milestone program, getting early betas, you are seeing the result of that now. So it's I won't go into the engineering challenges behind it, but it was not as easy as flipping on a switch. But one of the nice things about it, though, is that in doing this, we also had to look at the issue not just on Macintosh but on Windows. And on Windows, the problem is more complex. Macintosh. Well, at least the way they advertise it, there are basically kind of 2 possibilities. I think technically Macintosh allows more, but essentially 2 possibilities. On Windows, there are more like 4 or 5 different kind of possibilities which we would expect to be reasonably common. And so this is, we're still working on the more general case, but we've laid a lot of the groundwork. So under Windows, and I thought about giving my talk from a Windows laptop to show this, but my Windows laptop is 12 pounds for anyone who's seen it. I don't like carrying it around. The floating menu bar is finally gone. So the floating menu bar was an idea we had in 1996. For those who were around in 1996, you may recall that there was a lot of confusion about exactly how to deal with multiple document interfaces. Even Microsoft was confused about this and had 2 or 3 contemporary solutions at the time. So we came up with our own. Times moved on, we didn't, but now we have. And this is something that you can see in version 10 today. And so I'm glad to be rid of that. Around the bend, for those who've been asking for a Cocoa version of the front end forever, it's going to happen. Sorry, it's not going to happen in version 10, but we are, in working on the Retina version, we have made a lot of progress in that direction, and it is coming. And along with that, the full 64-bit front end. So that's my IOU. Hopefully by this time next year, I'll be able to show something real on that front. Okay, so Spreadsheet. This is something that a lot of people have asked for, and we've kind of delivered sort of prototype sorts of things, the ability to just to be able to see and enter lots of data without having to deal with list braces and such. And this is something that's going to be a first-class feature in version 10. It is, and I'm going to have to open up a new notebook for this. So it is a little bit shaky right now, so I'm not going to push it too hard, and I hope you'll bear with me. But it's, sorry, let me magnify this. But the function is called table view, and you know what? I never tried magnifying it, so let's find out what happens together. But I have tried giving it a lot of numbers, say 1,000 by 10,000, and it comes up very, very quickly. The idea here is we want an interface that is a window on the data. It doesn't have to, if we were to have printed this out as lists, it would take forever because it would have to create everything in the front end at once. Here, it only creates what you see. So it's kind of a very lightweight sort of system. It allows you to scroll around and look at your data and to be able to select it and enter the data. And that's where I have to, because we had the data entry working, but on my system it seems to have degraded. So that much I can't show you. So this is something that I would expect probably to be in the next milestone of version 10 for those people on the milestone program. And it's first-class feature. It's coming, and I showed examples here with numbers, but in terms of data entry, it's going to, by default, it's going to work very much like a spreadsheet that you work with, where it will support typing of anything being interpreted as numbers and strings by default, but you'll be able to tie into interpretation as expressions or to view any kind of data. It can be ragged. It does not have to be perfectly rectangular. And it will just cleanly support all those representations. We had image editing in 2D. For those people who weren't aware of this, this is in version 9, where you can just click on, oh yes, and that's right, that's actually off by default for style sheet presentations. So I'm going to, and I forgot to check that, so I'm going to have, oops. Okay, so you've seen this before if you've used version 9, or hopefully you have. This is an attempt to provide a better contextual interface for working with images, being able to do basic sorts of manipulations. We added some new stuff, so we had cropping transforms before. There's nothing new about that, but we added some new stuff in terms of coordinate picking and in terms of working with mass. And this is one of my personal beefs. If you look in the documentation, you see these kind of very nice sorts of examples where somebody generates a mask in order to say make a fuzzy circle around a particular part of the picture. But generating your own mask is kind of a pain in the butt, and it requires it requires writing a little bit of code that I can never quite remember how to do. So instead, now I can just create a mask interactively that hits the features that I want. I can copy it, and now I can do, and sorry, I should have magnified that again. Now I can create my own filter based on that. And now I've got my fuzzy filter. And now and that was much easier. I can do it interactively. I got exactly the features that I wanted. And it's not only mask, but being able to designate lines and points and other sorts of things, depending on the image processing and functionality that you're going for. So I think this makes working with the image processing stuff a lot simpler in version 10. So that's 2D. And oh yes, we're going to run into the same problem, I think, with the style sheet, which I didn't change here. So 3D is, Stephen showed this yesterday. I'm going to show it again in just a little bit more detail here. And so 3D images, they're not new. They've been around for a while. And you've been able to edit them in various ways before, but now we have a pop-out interface for doing so. And the pop-out interface, it's pretty nifty, although I have things large enough here. This may be a bit tricky to show, but we have a color function editor. This is really nice. It gives you, it also gives you a histogram of the data that you're working with. So it's kind of very useful in helping me to figure out, what sort of data do I want to exclude. There's this hump of data there, which I suspect is probably just noise that I can get rid of. And then there's, you can't quite see this on the screen, but there's just a little bit of kind of interesting data there that we can see if we can kind of enhance the folds of that, and then we can go ahead and apply the results. But what we really want to do is we really want to be able to see inside that brain, and so this is the kind of thing which ought to have been a straightforward interface. It's kind of a shame we weren't able to do this in version 9, but now we can look deep inside the brain and see all those structures. And not only that, I don't know about you, but I get challenged sometimes, especially if we have multiple clipping planes here. So that's interesting that we have an X and a Y, but I can never remember which one is which. So we can actually color them so I can see what's going on. And so I got my red as the X and my green as the Y. And now I have, and sorry, I'm fighting a bit. This may be a bit better. And now I can have a very good idea of what it is I'm actually going through. And being able to manipulate the structures in the way that I want to. So now, one of the interesting things here isn't about image editing, but it's about what we're doing. This opens up. And there's a slide missing there. This opens up a big. Essentially, what this is for us, it's a new road of contextual interfaces, and we have now built up our tool set. We've now done this twice. There's a bit of wisdom in programming in software development that that you've nailed some general piece of functionality if you can build 3 products off of it. So we're 2/3 of the way there. Actually, we've built other things. In fact, we've started building some of the contextual interfaces and table views. So I think that's probably a 3rd one. And this uses a mechanism that I refer to as attached cells. Attached cells are basically inline interfaces that you can pop up conveniently and they go away conveniently. They don't get saved into your notebook, no weird state or anything like that. And I'm hoping that we can expose the attached cell interface for version 10. So I'm hoping that's coming. It's certainly the case that we're using it all over the place internally. And we definitely intend to make that available to you. Okay, so fonts. Now this is an interesting sort of it seems a bit arcane, but it does have real-world consequences. Some of you know that we released a version of Mathematica for Windows about a year ago that had some very unfortunate conflicts with Windows itself and ended up causing some blue screen problems on certain systems. Not any system in-house. It took us a long time to figure out exactly what the problem was, but really we've had a whole gaggle of issues that have been related to font installation, and it's been made worse by the fact that we had 7 fonts. Why did we have 7 fonts? We had 7 fonts because we designed the system in 1996. We designed the system in version 3, and then and when we did it, we had to invent our own Unicode system because almost nobody else was using Unicode. I think the only major operating system at that time that was using Unicode was Windows NT, and nobody was using Unicode on Windows NT. It wasn't even that good anyway. So we invented our own system, which worked well enough until it started causing problems. So we spent a long time. Okay. So we spent a long time unifying the fonts, which we've done. And in the process, we also, as Stephen mentioned, we also added a 3rd font. So we've always had Mathematica Fonts for our special characters that do proportional. Those fonts match times. We never explicitly said this in the font, but it's a serifed font. And that's the second case down here. And then the 3rd case was a courier matching font, or one that matches monospace. But with version 9, some of our style sheets, for better or worse, I think there might be some arguments about that in the room, but in version 9, a lot of our style sheets tended towards more sans serif fonts. It's certainly a more modern style, but we didn't have any Mathematica fonts to match. And so now we're down to, instead of having 14 fonts sitting around, we actually added a font and then subtracted a bunch. So now we have just 3. And this is an example of now just being able to pull all of the glyphs really from just one single font here. iOS, that's part of the front end story. So I've mentioned this before. I talk about the front end. A lot of times we tend to think of the front end as being the desktop front end. But really we're working on 3 different front ends now because we're kind of insane that way. We have a front end, the desktop front end, the one that we've worked on for a long time. We have front end that is running under iOS, and I think you've all seen a little bit of that. And we have front end running on the Wolfram Cloud platform. That one I'm not going to talk about, but the front end under iOS, you saw it in the context of Stephen showed some demonstrations running under it, but the interesting thing is that the first version of that front end that is going to ship is maybe in a version that you didn't expect, and that's going to be in the calculator. So the way we built this front end, we built it as a software development kit, as something that is completely pluggable into your own system. And this is an SDK for people who are doing iOS development. This is an SDK that we're going to make available to you. And Rob Regay-Schofield is giving a talk later this morning. For anybody who does iOS development, I really encourage them to go to Rob's talk, and even people who are just deeply interested in the iOS products. Rob has some really interesting stuff to show there. But this is what, the calculator really is going to be the first CDF app on iOS. And what does that mean? Well, it has a full kernel. It has a brand new front end. The brand new front end has some really interesting technologies because we built it from the ground up. We were able to do some things that we haven't been able to pull off in the desktop front end yet. It's very memory efficient, it's fully multi-threaded, and there's a lot of exciting technology which allows it to run on what is a very nice platform. iOS is a very nice platform, but it's very limited. If I run out of memory on my MacBook here, it goes to hard disk and it gets more. If I run out of memory on an iPad, it goes back to the home screen. So that turns out to be a pretty critical limitation, and so we have to play very nicely here. And the CPU on an iPad is just not as powerful because it's a very battery efficient device, but it is a multi-core CPU. So if you're not if you're not using multiple cores, and especially if you're a performance-hungry application like we are, then you're just wasting the CPU's time. So we spent a long time putting this together. It is going to release in its first form in the calculator. Every time you're looking at computations, you're looking at results, you're looking at CDF embedded in the calculator. And I'm missing another slide here. It's actually a funny reason why I'm missing the slide. I'll let you know about that in a second. So the thing that is coming, though, I think, and I'm going to cross fingers here a little bit, and you all might be able to help me out a bit, but it looks like, so internally we are building a standalone, fully generalized player, and we've been CDF player under iOS. Okay, it's not Mathematica yet in terms of being able to actually create and edit notebooks on iPad, but it does basically everything else. And we've been struggling a bit with how we would actually get a player out to market, or what the what it would look like on the App Store. I think that there's been a lot of internal struggles. I think that the good guys are going to win this one. So, if you have any opinions about who the good guys and bad guys are, please let me know. Okay. So now for the coup de grace here. The old was single undo. Well, as Stephen said, we promised multiple undo. And we do have multiple undo. Well, actually, it's not true that we have multiple undo. I have multiple undo. This computer, the only computer in the world that has multiple undo right now. Why was I missing a slide? Because I was testing multiple undo in my slide, in my performance, or in my slideshow there. Sorry about that. That one got away from me a bit. Okay, so let's create a notebook here and do and magnification, and let's do some. So now I can just show you this and have that be enough, or redo, of course. But this merits more explanation, though. So there are some real challenges going on here, which we had to think about deeply, and I think that we've licked most of them. One of the big challenges is we have a document here that lives in the context of time. You do Shift-Enter at some point, you get a result out. And even now, it can be kind of difficult to. You get tiny little cues if you make a change that says that you are out of sync somehow. If I make a change here, the cell label disappears. Well, this is one of the things that we figured out, is that maybe we can strengthen those cues. And I don't know how well you can see that on the screen, but we actually have, this design is not final. We'll probably strengthen the visual cues yet more in some way. But we actually have a real sense of, does the input cell match the output cell? Did this input cell generate that output cell? Well, not necessarily just this input cell. Notice I can add white space, and it knows. It knows that white space doesn't matter. White space doesn't get sent to the kernel. Comments don't get sent to the kernel, so it knows. And this means then that when I'm rewinding and doing my back and forth, and I'm trying to figure out, where am I at? Is this, to be clear, we're never rewinding the actual kernel state itself. But I don't think that's terribly confusing for most people, because I think it's already sort of the case that you have a notebook that represents a bunch of discrete points in time, but you want to be able to identify those points. And so this was one of the big things, I think, that when we figured out was kind of a point of victory for us. But it is the case that you can really kind of get yourself in trouble as well with this kind of with the time-based stuff that's going on, and also the fact that you have side effects coming into your notebook. And when I say side effects, I mean like output cells or print cells or whatever. And so here's something else which. A problem which may not have been immediately obvious, but certainly was something that kept me up at night. So what I'm doing here is I am creating a slow evaluation. I'm not going to make it that slow because we do want to end the talk on time. But I'm creating a slow evaluation during which I'm going to go ahead and do some other stuff. So that evaluation is going to go, and now I'm going to go ahead and make my section here. Now, what we don't want is we don't want multiple undo to say, OK, let's undo those print cells one at a time. Because from your point of view, you press Shift-Enter once. You press Shift-Enter once, you should do one undo. But now we have a problem, because now we've mixed in the results of the Shift-Enter with the results of doing other things. And so this is kind of related to what was going on up here with this consistency checking. Is we now have a mechanism for those who are a bit technically minded for hashing various sections of the notebooks, so that we can really determine efficiently what the state of the notebook was. And we can make an attempt, and in this case, the attempt will succeed. We can make an attempt to undo, and everything, in this case, everything worked, because I didn't do anything really crazy, like trying to, for example, insert a cell between the print cells, or change one of the print cells, or something like that. If you tried to do that, you could end up in a state where it would be arbitrarily hard to figure out how to undo it and not corrupt the notebook. And that's really important, because as much as people really wanted multiple undo, and I'm with you, but what I want more is to not corrupt notebooks. So I appreciate that there's no applause for not corrupting notebooks. It's our job, after all. But it's what keeps me up late at nights. So we now have a multiple undo, and it doesn't corrupt notebooks, no matter how hard you push it. OK, well.